And now we present to you Thac0 with Advantage.
Welcome to Thac0 with Advantage. We're two friends that have been playing D&D a long time. While we both love lots of other RPGs, D&D told us we're high enough level to build a podcast and attract followers. Hi, I'm Ange, and I have been gaming for so long that I occasionally game with the children of the gamers I played with when I was barely an adult. Anyway, RPGs are my jam, and I write for Gnome Stew and do all these podcast things.
I'm Jared. The first time I ran D&D for my friends, I tormented them by trapping them on an island with a vampire. We've come so far now that I am running Curse of Strahd for my daughters and their friends, where I am trapping them in Barovia and tormenting them with a vampire. I used to write things, and you can find those things at Gnome Stew and whatdoiknowjr.com. After we look at the games we're running in the campaign journal, we'll be talking about rewards that aren't standard treasure. Then we'll have some recommendations of D&D related content for you to check out in our downtime research segment.
Now stand by for station identification. This is WD&D the Role Player. Now we're going to McElroy McKinney and the Bardic College.
In earlier editions of D&D, when your character reached a certain level, they could build a fortress and attract followers. Clerics would attract less powerful priests, but wizards would attract apprentices. Thieves got to open a branch of the Thieves Guild to run, and fighters got to collect taxes. They also attracted followers because if you're going to collect taxes from the locals, you need armed and armored tax collectors. While AD&D had random event tables, this is another instance where BECMI actually had more playable rules that involved tracking a confidence level and rolling on the specific events for that confidence level, which specified what happened every new year. Whenever there was a natural disaster, when a large unallied military force shows up, and if you cancel an unexpected holiday or celebration. This means Alan Rickman had to make a confidence level check in Robin Hood Prince of Thieves when he cancels Christmas.
Let me just finish up this campaign journal.
I was trying to remember what happened in all my games, and then I realized I haven't actually played any of them since the last time we recorded. I attended Buckeye Game Fest in Columbus for one of the weekends between now and when we recorded. So that basically got in the way of City of Cowls and the Victoriana game. And then this past weekend, where we would have played Old Margrave, we had a couple of players indisposed, so we just got online and played board games. Also, did you know that it is hard to finish a campaign? Both City of Cowls and Jared's Marody game have been close to wrapping up, to the point that we all thought that these games would be done by the beginning of February. And here we are at the end of March. That said, both of them should be finishing soon, and I'm serious about soon. We're actually playing City of Cowls this coming weekend in person with cake, and it should be a good time. We're actually also having one of the players who was there at the beginning of the campaign. He is coming back with his character to take part in the finale. His character, Fiona, was going to be there anyway, and we were just like, it would be really nice if he could be here. And then it's like, well, let's talk to him. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to be in town anyway. So that's going to be awesome. And then Marody, it's theoretically going to finish the week after.
In theory.
We finish up City of Cowls. And if it doesn't, I'm going to be hunting down some people. I did get to actually run a D&D game at BGF, though. Because it is primarily a board game convention that is trying to build an RPG presence, I decided to run a couple of games that would have broad appeal. You guys have heard me talk about, I have D&D at home, I'm not going to play it at cons. Mostly because it's the experience of playing D&D at cons is usually not as good as playing other games for me, whereas I know I can get the D&D experience I want with the people I know. But since BGF is new to getting RPGs on the table, I figured I'd run a couple of standard things. One was a Savage World science fiction game, and the other was a D&D game called Shadows of Grief. The general conceit is that the PCs were all once part of a very tight adventuring party, but 2 years ago, just as their bard was getting married and going to settle down to start a family, he died fighting an evil necromancer. The party fell apart after that as they all dealt with their grief in different ways and went on with their lives. Now, 2 years later, the widow has reached out to them and asked for their help dealing with a situation in the town where she lives. I had 5 players. There was one no-show. There were supposed to be 6. Of the 5, 3 of them were great, and 2 were okay. The guy that picked the rogue, and he and I butted heads a bit because, well, you guys know that I love rogues, and I was kind of annoyed that he refused to have her get into melee because I gave her a really, really cool crystal rapier. And instead, he insisted on staying ranged with the non-magical short bow. It was kind of okay in the first battle because it made sense for him to have her running around doing bonus action hides and plucking off the minions and stuff that were around. But once they were into the final battle where they're dealing with the big bad, he was resistant to all non-magical damage. So they're trying to, they can't hide anymore because it's a big open room, and they're trying to shoot at that guy and doing 2 points of damage. And I'm like, I don't want to tell you how to play a rogue, but man, do I really want to tell you how to play a rogue, because this is not working for me. The role-playing was pretty good with some of them. They got into these are their friends they haven't seen in a while. But other players are like, no, I'm here to play D&D. I just want to kill things. So, I had a couple of murder hobos, but what are you going to do? Anyway, I generally stick to other game systems for conventions, but it is nice to have another D&D con game in my back pocket that I can pull out whenever I need it.
So, Ange, would you say you had a collection of different player types at your table?
I may have. I might have talked about this a little bit on the Gnomecast.
Well, as Ange pointed out, we did not finish our Marodi campaign. I feel like we've kind of gone from having the network scheduling for a TV show to having a streaming service schedule. So we're trying to get to that finale of Stranger Things where we're all going to be 10 years older than we were when we started this. But today, I think I'm going to talk a little bit about my Curse of Strahd game, which is my face-to-face game that I run for my daughters and their friends. One of my daughters doesn't always make it. We have this running conceit with her goblin barbarian that they will just find her in random places, usually curled up and sleeping. Since the last session, everyone had gotten drunk at the inn after their big fight, after conjuring elks in offices and things of that nature. They found her goblin in the storage room behind the crate sleeping. So she joined them for this part of the adventure again. The party found a room that Rudolph Van Richten was staying in, so they ended up grabbing his journal. Interestingly, they didn't look through it because I added a bunch of interesting stuff in there because I am, as is my wont, I cannot just run a published adventure straight, so I've added a bunch of different little ins and outs into there. They never got around to reading Van Richten's journal, but it is important for them to try and figure out where Van Richten is because he is the person that their Thac0 reading at the beginning says has to be with them when they confront Strahd. On top of that, the only other things that they need is they need to figure out where in Castle Ravenloft they were supposed to confront Strahd, which they kind of need to go into Castle Ravenloft to figure out. And there is something that is supposed to give them information about their enemy that lies near the bones of one of Strahd's enemies that they need to find. They already kind of figured out that this is in the house of Lady Watchter, who is the woman who runs an infernal cult that took over this town from the previous Burgermeister. So they decided it's time to get that book because it's not, I don't want to say the end is close for this campaign, but if we were looking at a 3-act structure, they're in the 3rd act probably. Curse of Strahd is weird because it is very much a sandbox adventure, so there's actually a fairly good amount of stuff they can do, but if you're just going by the stuff that the Thac0 card reading has told them they need to do before they confront Strahd, they're getting a lot closer to wrapping all of that up. So they decide to scout out Lady Watchter's house. They do not have their haunted sorcerer with them, therefore they do not have the specter familiar that they usually use to phase through walls and move invisibly through an entire location as they are scouting it. So they had to scout the old-fashioned way. Our Dampier wizard, her player, is so excited now that she realizes that she can spider climb, so she keeps wanting to use this ability. She decided she was going to go scout the second floor. The problem is, she is not stealthy in the least. She climbs up to the second floor, no problem, doesn't have to make any checks, she just sticks to the wall. And I ask her to make her stealth check, and I believe the number was somewhere around a 3. So I told her, Lady watched her, heard her, she's moving towards the window, what do you want to do? And she's like, I'm going to try and like jump off the roof to get out of her line of sight immediately. So the Dampier wizard, even though she can stick to walls, jumps off the roof, hits the ground, takes damage. The bard goes over and asks her, what the hell just happened?
Like, you can walk on walls, you can't fly.
Yeah, you're only part vampire. So the scouting thought process changed a little bit. The bard went invisible to scout around the outside of the first floor. The bugbear monk is good at climbing, even though she can't spider climb. She tucks the goblin into her pack and crawls up to the second floor and starts scouting out the second floor. They find a library that is filled with cats.
Ooh.
And one of the cats has a key on its collar. And they're like, there's no way that's not important. So the bugbear monk tells the bard, we have found this thing. And the bard is like, well, obviously we don't want the cats causing a ruckus. It'll probably be easier if somebody can speak with animals. So she looks around. Cleric can't speak with animals. Bard can't speak with animals because she never took that spell. The wizard can't speak with animals. All of a sudden, the goblin barbarian goes, I can speak with animals. Because it was part of her subclass that she can speak with animals. So the bugbear monk lockpicks the window open, and the goblin is speaking to the cat with the key, finds out that the cat is actually the daughter of Lady Watcher, who has had her soul switched with one of the cats. And the key that she has leads to some of the magical treasures that Lady Watcher has. So they cut a deal with the daughter about how, we will figure out how to get you back into your own body if you will show us where the treasure is at and kind of help us sneak into the second floor of this room.
This mean there's a young woman out there that is actually a cat?
Yes, because they went around the other side of the second floor and they see a girl that is basically like jumping on furniture and yowling and tearing at things.
Why are my fingers so blunt? Why can't I bend all the way I should?
This was going to go great, except about this time, while the bard is scouting out the lower floor and they're getting ready to figure out how to get to the second floor, the servants from the servant quarters hear somebody outside the window. And that somebody is the cleric, because the cleric heard that there were cats on the second floor and she's wanted a pet ever since they got to Barovia. The problem is the cleric is not good at climbing. So she gets stuck with her legs dangling in front of the servants' quarter window. The servants start coming outside. The bard panics and, reaches for her new bag of tricks, her literal bag of tricks, pulls out an animal, and it is a dire wolf. And what she tells the dire wolf is, stop them before they can alert anyone. A dire wolf, when you tell them to stop them and they're seeing prey running around, has a tendency to just, chomp on things. So it ate one of the servants. I had told the bard, you feel the cold fingers of the dark powers creeping down your spine. She goes, why? And then she goes, oh, yeah. So, she amended the orders and said, okay, just keep them from moving. Don't eat any more of them. And then before the rest of them could come running out, she impersonated Lady Watcher's voice and told them to go back in because she has work for them. She only killed one of them. There's only one innocent servant that got eaten by a dire wolf.
Poor Jeeves.
Yeah. So they make it up to the second floor. They get to the daughter's room, and, the cat in the daughter's body is like rushing the door trying to get out because it is panicking because it's been locked in its room. The cleric casts Greater Restoration because he had a scroll of it, fixes, switches the souls back, and the daughter shows them where the hidden closet is at which point they finally found an actual bag of holding. I think they were more excited about the bag of holding than they were when they found the sun sword.
You said at the beginning of this that they're about 3/4 of the way through the campaign. That's a long time to go without a bag of holding.
Oh, yeah. 4 out of 6 characters are moving at a rate of 20 because of their encumbrance.
Oh, you're one of those GMs making them deal with encumbrance.
I wouldn't have. They decided to loot everything in sight when they were in the Amber Temple.
This reminds me of when my friend Jen was running Tyranny of the Dragon Queen. She ran it twice. She technically ran it 3 times because she ran it for me and a group of folks, including her husband, for her brother and some other folks, and then she has recently been running it for her kids. But her brother's group found a couch and decided to bring it with them through the entire campaign.
Yeah, there's a certain point at which the DM has to kind of say, no, that's going to be difficult for you. But they were very excited. They had their bag of holding. And they also know that, Lady Watcher probably has the book that this is me. I gave away that it was a book on accident because it was like, it is knowledge of your enemy. It's a book. So they're looking for a book. And they didn't find it in the library. They didn't find it in the hidden room. So they're assuming this must be with Lady Watcher in the bedroom. Also, when they spied on her through the bedroom window, Lady Watcher is reading poetry to her husband. Her husband is dead and has gentle repose cast on him and is laying in bed, and she reads poetry to him.
All right, then.
Yep, it's Ravenloft. So they have this plan to rush in there and take out Lady Watcher. The bard gets right up next to the door. She's going to fling the door open. Everybody's going to run in. I said, okay, if you make we're going to do the sleight of hand versus perception to see if you get a surprise round. We did this, and I'm thinking, I'm giving them a chance, but she has an imp that's invisible. It's just watching the door while she reads poetry to her dead husband. So the imp will probably do fine. Imp rolled a 3. Imp did not notice the door opening at all. Lady Watcher is a warlock, but she is not statted up as a special villain or anything. So she's not a legendary creature. She didn't get legendary actions. So I was surprised she lasted all through the surprise round and got into the second round, to be honest. They take out Lady Watcher. They take out the imp, open up the big iron chest, and they find a book and a bunch of bones that are all wrapped up in a rotting blanket. Essentially what happened is Lady Watcher's ancestor helped Strahd kill one of the nobles that had turned on him and tried to kill him the night that he became a vampire. They pull out the book and they look at what it is, and it is the Tome of Strahd. It is basically Strahd's diary that Lady Watcher has been keeping safe for him. So now they have Van Richten's journal and the Tome of Strahd. This is going to give them a bunch more insight that they can use to find out things. There's a particular thing in the castle that if they don't get rid of, it gives Strahd hit points back, which is probably a good thing to find out ahead of time. It's pretty exciting, and it's all exciting because they have 2 books. Who isn't excited when they get 2 books?
I love getting books.
So basically now they need to decide, are they just going to find Van Richten? Or are they going to go to dinner first and scout out the castle? Or are they going to try and do a little bit more of the stuff that they can do in Barovia before the confrontation? But it is more of a choice now rather than stuff they have to do at this point. We've got a Patreon to help us keep doing this show. In addition to keeping the lights on, we also provide additional content meant to help make your games better. Currently, we've got various posts granting advice on a range of topics you'll face as a GM. We've also got crunchy mechanical bits like Ancestry Origin feats, alternate XP rules, and you can get a look at our Masters of the Universe inspired Daggerheart campaign frame. We'd love it if you would join us and help support the show, and we have a Discord that anyone can join. Come over and have a chat with us. You can find us at patreon.com/THAC0WA.
Welcome to the Dungeon Master's Workshop.
When we think of rewards in Dungeons & Dragons and similar games, we usually think of treasure and experience, gold, that type of thing. But do we always need to hand out gold or magic items? What are some other options for rewarding our players and their characters in a way that flows with the story of the campaign? We're going to take a look at some other ways to reward your players, so let's get started. Are there any guidelines in official D&D rules about rewards that aren't gold or magic items?
What's really funny is in the 2014 DMG, there's literally just a section that says other rewards. And they have supernatural gifts, marks of prestige, and epic boons. Marks of prestige do not come over into the 5.5 DMG, and the epic boons kind of got rolled into the things you get when you're epic level that you can substitute instead of feats, which just leaves the blessings and charms in the 5.5 DMG as alternate rewards. We'll talk a little bit about the marks of prestige elsewhere, but it is interesting that they just kind of like dropped the ball on that one.
Boop, they're gone. So it pretty much the official, guide just gives you the magic items and gold and treasure and that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing because the 5.5 DMG is not bad, but it is like a lot of other things in the 5.5 books where it feels like we have given you exactly what you need, the bare minimum that you need to do this, and nothing more, because we're trying to pack so much stuff into one spot.
So what were marks of prestige?
So the examples that they had were letters of recommendation, medals, parcels of land, special favors, special rights, strongholds, titles, and training.
Why do you think they might have taken them out of 5.5? Other than they needed space or something like that.
Well, I mean, looking at that list, the other thing that they did besides pulling out the epic boons is strongholds pretty much got rolled into the whole section on bastions in the 5.5 rules. So I guess in a way they didn't disappear. They actually got more details. I don't really know why they would get rid of the other things other than that they are kind of open-ended, when you start talking about those other things that you can give people.
Did they slide training into any other place?
I haven't seen training show up in anything else, and that is one of the more interesting ones to me.
Yeah, because that one actually can give you a mechanical benefit based on the way it was written in the 2014 rules.
Right.
Let's dig a little deeper, since based on the title of this episode, these could narratively fit into any game. Let's take a look at letters of recommendation, special favors, and special rights. What are some of the potential issues with these?
One of the things right off the bat when you read special rights, I get nervous about that because there are some players that are great and they will envision themselves as heroes and they will act accordingly. And there are other people that if you mention special rights, they're thinking, yes, my PC is above all of this stuff. So if I want to set the innkeeper on fire and laugh about it, I can do that. That's the kind of thing I want to avoid with special rights, which is why I would say all three of these things, like letters of recommendation, special favors, special rights, be really specific about the kind of things that you grant with these.
I think some of that can be tone related you have to align what you expect out of the players in the campaign with the players. And what you're describing to me sounds a lot like the type of players who are like playing a D&D game like it's a video game.
Yeah.
Meaning if they can do something and they can get away with it, they're just going to do it. And that doesn't always work when you're playing a cooperative storytelling game like D&D.
Yeah.
I mean, your mileage may vary because it really depends on how somebody is running it, because I'm sure there are GMs who that's the type of game they run, but I think most of us like a little more verisimilitude in our games.
I do think it's funny because these all strike me as the kind of rewards that you can give somebody that is less a reward and more just keeping the campaign moving in a narrative direction that you want it to.
Mm-hmm.
Because your letter of recommendation, you have an excuse for them to talk to an NPC that maybe they couldn't have spoken to before, and now that can act as a patron for the PCs.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily something you aren't planning for, but if suddenly, like, they can go talk to Elminster and, you know, nobody's allowed to get near his tower unless, you know, they're granted this privilege, that means something even if you as the DM were already planning on letting that happen once you give them that letter of recommendation.
In the City of Cal's campaign, when we saved the royal family of Pelorios, the entire party got knighted.
Mm.
You know, and several players decided to take that to the full extreme and would introduce themselves as lady or lord such and such. And it's just like, my character being the, you know, the runaway princess is like, it's not that big of a deal.
The special rights thing is interesting to me too, because on one hand, you know, you can sit there and go, oh no, they want to be treated better than the regular population. But you actually can use that kind of reward to do something like, no one is allowed into the dungeons under the castle, but because you have proven yourself, if you want to explore it, now you can legally go down there. You don't have to sneak past any guards or anything like that. The other thing that was kind of interesting is in the Marodi game, Ivy actually got a writ saying that she counts as being dragon-blooded, which in the Marodi Empire means she can own land and can be considered a full citizen too. So that's an interesting thing if your campaign has those little ins and outs where maybe some people don't have, you know, the same rights as a full citizen unless they get... Now, you have to be careful with that as well. But in this case, it is really... I mean, in that campaign, it's interesting anyway, because none of you were playing... Well, one of you was playing a Dragonborn. The rest of you weren't playing kobolds or anything like that, so you're all kind of playing people that are not considered the ruling class of this kingdom.
Which, to a certain degree, I think makes a little bit of sense in that we are, you know, especially at the beginning of the campaign, easily overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
So we made good agents for Yirazaza.
Yeah.
So what about parcels of land, strongholds, actual property? How do these affect a campaign, and why should you be charging your players taxes?
For one thing, sometimes just owning something that's permanent in a campaign feels like a reward. I don't know, like in if you go and look at Critical Role, when they first got their castle, I don't think it did a lot mechanically, but it was just the idea that, you know, you own this now because you did something good for us, so now you can do whatever you want. And then they named it Castle Grayskull, which was kind of funny, but isn't what it's called in the cartoon for various reasons.
No. For copyright reasons. I think with property, that it's very much going to depend on the type of campaign you're running, but it can be one of those things that helps the players feel like their characters are more tied to the setting because they have a place they can call home, a place they can go for their downtime, a place that they are concerned about protecting and building up, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and that was another thing that happened in the Marodi campaign, because you got given the manor home. Originally, it was just a place that she was having you stay, but eventually she gifted it over to all of you, where that's your house now.
Yeah.
So even if you quit working for her, that's your house.
In City of Cowls, it wasn't so much a reward, but they burned down, our enemies burned down the first Kraken's Maw.
Mm-hmm.
And basically Dove stood upon the ruins and shouted at the crowd that they would not cow us. And then we basically poured all our gold into rebuilding it and making it ours.
Yeah.
It was still run by the same, the same people, but now we had rooms that were actually ours and we were owners, with income and so on and so forth like that.
Yeah, and that's a thing I wanted to touch on too is if your PCs actually appreciate that they own that permanent thing, don't take it away casually, because it's a thing now that is like, this exists in the setting and we can say it's ours. And it's almost like a little bit of fridging if you kill their home while they're away.
Yeah.
And again, as we've said with that doesn't mean you never threaten it. It just don't do it casually. Don't do it like, oh yeah, you went around the corner and then it got caught on fire.
You very much have to let the players experience the benefit of having a location like that as theirs before, you can truly attack it, damage it. Like, if you do something too soon that destroys it, that's just like, well, why did you bother letting us have that in the first place? Well, that was kind of dickish. Different style of game, but I ended up having a conflict with the GM when we were basically driven out of our home in the second session of the campaign. This is the last session of the campaign, but the second session, because he's like, well, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to keep you guys on your toes and put you in danger and all of this. And like, we never got to experience the benefit of this location.
Yeah.
It's just somebody's backstory now because it was never good for us in gameplay. It was taken away too soon. Things were said a little more heatedly than that. Let's just say that was the end of that particular gaming group. I feel bad about the way I handled it, but it probably was about the time to go our separate ways.
And to bring in the obligatory comic book reference here, the joke now is that the X mansion gets blown up like every few months in the comics. But if you had not had it to where you see them hanging out in the thing and you see their individual rooms and you see them using the danger room, if you didn't see them doing all of those things, it doesn't mean anything for it to get attacked and blown up and be taken away from them.
In, again, not a D&D game, but in the Supers game, the characters they kind of fell in with a group of people that gave them a safe place to be, a safe base of operations. They had some time to establish themselves and deal with what was happening in the world and had happened to them when that base got attacked and drove them out. But that was like quite a few sessions into the campaign after they'd had time to kind of deal with things. And the benefit of that was after that, they were able to establish their own base on their own terms with what they wanted after that. So it was a bad thing throwing the characters off kilter and having to deal with this new situation and the fact that their enemies found them and what are they doing now? But after that, it gave them that new sense of purpose and new base.
I do think it's interesting because both the 5.5 DMG and the Tales of the Valiant Game Master's Guide basically have these sections that say if you have this type of section to your stronghold, you get a specific benefit. So in other words, it's not the AD&D or BECMI era. You set the castle up on the land and then you get to charge people for living on the land now. It's more specific. So like if you build a library in one of them, you might be able to like get a certain number of clues in Tales of the Valiant, or just be able to research for free with downtime, in the 5.5 rules. So there's all sorts of things like that where you have discounted items, or you get free items, or you get free castings of certain spells, or you might get temporary hit points if you rest at your home base. There are still some things that you can have in your fortresses that generate money, but like I've noticed some of them are more like you have a tavern in your thing, so people show up and you get, and it also kind of expands that idea that it has to be a castle, because if you're a rogue and you're running a thieves guild out of this place, you could have a tavern and collect money real easily.
So how does training work as a reward? I know it's not technically in the 5.5 version, but what is it mechanically and how should it be in the fiction of the game?
I really liked it because training was basically someone that is really good at a thing is going to reward you and show you their special technique for a thing, so now you gain it. And essentially what it was doing is it was giving you like an extra feat or a skill that you didn't already have, You don't have to justify it. It's not one of the things that you pay for with the number of feats or skills that you normally get. It's just over and above that. And while that does make you more powerful, it's not like way out of whack either. And it does kind of feel special when you can say, well, we learned how to do this from this person.
I actually did that in the Depths of Zendrick campaign, where I basically, as a kind of reward for completing the journey from Corvair to Zendrick, they earned a feat because they were on the boat for X amount of time with nothing to do but get over being seasick, deal with the monster that was on board, and then train. So I basically was like, you all get a free feat. I will say one of the issues to be careful of is if you are running on a VTT, you need to figure out how to actually give them that bonus feat.
Yeah.
I know how to do it in Shard now, but...
Yeah, technical things. Yeah, and I also like that idea that there are times when, in order to get more skills in D&D, sometimes it can be a little onerous because you have to like burn a whole feat where you get like 3 extra skills, but you really just wanted this 1 extra skill, and the rest of that feat is kind of going to waste. So in this case, you can kind of see something that the player character wants, and you can give them a contact that will say, I can teach you how to do this thing, and then you can reward them by giving them that thing.
And while this is a very mechanical reward in the grand scheme of things, it also is a nice way to tie those mechanics into the narrative. You know, like, what is the all-powerful entity that granted them this special boon? What is the work they did to gain this? Who is the person that trained them? It's all sorts of little story elements you can add in. Or you can just do it because you're a benevolent GM and you want your players to have cool things. In the Dungeon of the Mad Mage campaign, he got tired of us kind of groaning about, oh no, I don't have any attunement slots left. So basically, by the end of the campaign, we all had an extra attunement slot. He's like, I'm giving you magic items. I want you to use them.
And the funny thing is I like having NPC mentors and people that can serve as that like teacher type, but I don't like most of the rules that D&D has ever had about saying you have to train between levels, because it usually amounts to you have to say you spent this much time and this much gold and now you get to get your level, and it's like, so the thing you already earned now you have to pay for. You know, that doesn't feel good. But knowing that you went to a certain ranger and they're the ones that taught you the toughness feat because they made you go out in the wilderness for 2 weeks with them, that feels a little bit different. And then you know that you know, if you ever want to consult with a ranger that knows how to camp out in the wilderness for 2 weeks, then you have that contact now.
I would also say training can be the type of thing that can be part of downtime. And you've heard us talk about downtime in our own campaigns and how we've been using it. And it's a very cool way to like expand upon the world the characters are living in, because they are doing more than just going out and being murder hobos.
And I mean, that has always kind of bugged me a little bit when you have your characters that start off at first level and then less than a year later, they're 20th level. It does feel like they kind of did a speed run of becoming demigods in that instance. The other thing that I was going to say is, kind of like with that special permissions thing, you can also make a reward that is basically just funneling them into something you want them to be able to do as well, because along with skills, you can also kind of roll, tool use into that. You can also roll languages into that. And let's say you have something coming up where there's going to be a language that nobody knows. And so all of a sudden, this teacher that the wizard has just says, you know what? Have you ever wanted to learn deep speech? I don't think so, but I guess that'd be interesting. Yeah, let me teach you deep speech.
Languages are one of those things where if you want them to mean something in your campaign, you actually have to pointedly do that.
Mm-hmm.
I hear conversations all the time about like, well, languages don't mean anything because, everyone speaks common, so it doesn't matter. And sometimes as a GM, I just don't want to deal with it. Because you end up with the, like, well, one person in the party speaks this language, and now they're the only person allowed to roleplay with the NPC that speaks it, and it's just, it's a very cool aspect of a setting, but you have to choose to engage with it in a way that is going to be fun for your players, and having them be able to learn languages is a really cool thing. Savage Worlds does an interesting thing where all of the skills are based on, certain die types. You start at a D4 and then a D6, D8, so on and so forth. And everyone has their native language at D8, just out of the gate. If you want languages to mean something and you want people to learn them, they can start and they can get that D4 in a language, which means, okay, they're trying, they're learning. And that can be an interesting way to engage with that. But I do think it's like languages, you got to choose to engage with them.
And I think this is side tangent from what we're talking about here, but the other thing that I think we get locked into with languages is that either you can communicate with someone or you can't based on whether you have the language, but you can also expand that out. For one thing, Common is supposed to be kind of a trade tongue. It's not really, it's something that like mercenaries and merchants and scholars all know, but it is also something where if you go and talk to, like the Elven noble and you're speaking to them in Common and you can't speak Elvish, that's telling them something about you. And that might make them, even more inclined to kind of look down their nose at you because, oh, we have to have this conversation in Common, don't we?
Yeah. Like I said, it's a choice. It is a completely valid choice to engage with on that level. It's also a completely valid choice to be like, I just don't want to deal with languages. We're just going to roll with it. And that Common is the common language that most people speak. Moving on, what do we need to set up in our games to make titles and medals and honors like that worth handing out to our players?
So I think the biggest thing, if you really want to hand out titles and medals, is you have to establish that there are people that have the authority to hand these things out to somebody. Because otherwise, why don't you just start calling yourself sir or whatever? The funny thing is, this is another instance where I'm going to throw Critical Role out there too. The whole thing where Percy gave, Grog.
Grog?
Yeah. In Critical Role, when Percy gave Grog his ridiculous title, Grog felt so special for having that title, and Travis would roll that title out every chance that he got once he got it.
Lord Groggery.
Exactly. But I mean, the point was they were kind of reinforcing that this is Percy's birthright to retake that area too, so he could hand out those titles. Sometimes when you hand out those titles, it is going to give them access to like a strata of people they couldn't normally talk to. If you are like the official court wizard, now maybe you can talk to all of the military wizards that normally would turn their noses up at you and wouldn't talk to you, so now they have to listen to you. It might give you advantage or make the starting disposition for some NPCs better when they know that you have a certain title or a medal. I mean, medals are tricky because you have to kind of establish what is the history of that medal, because usually you don't just give, it's weird being the first person to ever get that medal.
I think one of the interesting things you can do with these types of things are, the characters started out, just simple adventurers, and then as their adventures gain them renown and fame and brings them into the halls of power, suddenly these titles or honors or medals, whatever they've gained, allow them to be in on the conversations about more epic, grand plans regarding whatever trouble is going on in this place. Like in the Marodi games, suddenly we're having conversations with the Empress in exile because she needs us. Mm. And we're like, wait, she's kind of important, isn't she?
And it's interesting too, because that's the other thing to keep in mind is you can hand out titles as a reward, but titles also can have responsibilities. Like, you may get to hang out with all of the rich people, and you may have people not want to, harass you because you have that title, but at the same time, you might have that person above you saying, because you have that title now, you are responsible for pacifying this, or making sure that this goes the way it's supposed to go.
I mean, it could vary. You could even have it be something like, they pissed off. Yeah, they've done all these noble, like, they have done all of these grand things for the kingdom, but the noble that's giving them the title is super annoyed at them, so they give them the piece of crap piece of land that they now have to deal with, like Castle Sloke.
Yeah, here's a reward for you.
Yeah. But it basically, what it boils down to is these are narrative rewards that can help propel the campaign forward. Beyond what is in the books as written, what other options do we have for rewards?
One of the things that I have noticed a lot is that when people like to play wizards, they like to find extra spells to put in their spell book. And I think what we as DMs sometimes fall into is, oh, here's some random scrolls, so you can decide whether you want to use those as one-shots or you want to put them into your spell book. But there is something special about finding a spell book as part of treasure. And you can argue maybe this is a little bit more standard treasure, but I don't think it's quite the same thing. Because, looking at that spell book, that is increasing their power. That's not just a one-use magic item. That's not just something they're going to spend. That is a thing that is now part of them and has expanded their ability to do things.
You can also have it be like a plot point in the campaign where that found spell book has actual information the players are going to need against something they're going to be facing later on, rather than just mechanically, here's another 5 spells that you can add to your repertoire.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was, if you look at the Dragonlance books, when Raistlin wanted to find Fistandantilus's spell books, that was major foreshadowing, where it's like, oh yeah, I want these because of the spells, but it's also like, this is part of this whole thing that is possessing him and then driving him to go into the past and repeat Fistandantilus's steps. So that is a big deal beyond just the fact that Raistlin figured out how to, I forget, I should be able to remember what spell he got out of there, but I don't remember, so. But still. But yeah, there is something neat about a spell book and having that, especially when you can build a history to the spell book, like who owned this, how long has it been lost, things like that. The other thing I would say, because this came up in the Ravenloft game, but I think you can attest to this too, pets.
Yeah.
People like pets.
Did the cleric get her cat?
Yes.
Good.
She will, as long as they get out of the mansion, because they kind of stopped right after they killed Lady Watcher.
I will say, if you put a cute pet-like animal in your game, your players will want to make it a pet. I put a Tressum in the Dragon Heist campaign, and I actually put a whole colony of Tressum in the campaign that had been driven out of the Feywild into Waterdeep, and the players kind of had to deal with what was happening with that. And they're like, can we keep one? We want one. And so, because they were so enamored with it, one followed them home. And, now they have a Tressum living in Trollkeep Banner, their tavern they also got as part of that campaign.
I would also say, when we're talking strictly about pets, take a cue from video games, because a lot of times in video games, when you get a pet, the pet isn't in any danger of getting damaged. It doesn't really do anything. It's just there to follow the person around so they can look at the cute thing that's their pet now.
Yeah. It's one thing if it's an actual familiar or mystical companion.
Yeah.
That if it falls in combat, they can just summon it back later. It's a whole other thing if you kill Fluffy and there's no coming back for Fluffy. Don't try not to do that.
The Clerics player, when we tried our original campaign, she was playing a druid and she found an Almiraj, which, if you don't know what an Almiraj is in D&D, it's a bunny with a unicorn horn. I mean, they don't do much, but it's a bunny with a unicorn horn. So they rescued it from a mean owlbear, and they never expected it to be able to do anything. They just wanted it because it was a bunny with a unicorn horn. So it was never really in any danger or anything like that. Sometimes I might, kind of narrate that it was, but I was never going to do anything to it because it's not providing them any extra benefit other than just knowing that they have a bunny with a unicorn horn.
I want a bunny with a unicorn horn on it.
The other thing that I think is neat is you can give people rituals. And it is basically rituals can be this thing where it is beyond them being able to count on what they can do. And when I say rituals, I don't necessarily mean like you take 10 minutes to cast something and don't use a spell slot. I mean like once a year at this one particular time, if you have this particular material, you can do a special thing. And that way they can't just keep spamming the thing, but they have the special knowledge of something that will do something neat for them that most people don't know how to do.
I think that's an important thing too, because like we talked about earlier, some players treat the game like a video game, and you let them do a cool thing once, and that's all they're going to spam to try and keep doing in the future. It's why I will sometimes be like, I'm going to allow this unusual use of this spell, this item, this thing once. We are not doing it again.
There was kind of an interesting, back in the 3rd edition era, Dragon Magazine article that was talking about if you wanted to take like Raise Dead and Resurrection and all that out of the game, but not necessarily make it to where you can't ever do it. And they were basically saying you can do this thing where it is like a ritual you can do once a year at the border between the land of the living and the dead. So you can get your friends back, but it's not a thing you want to keep counting on because it's going to be a whole other year before you can do this again, and it's in these specific circumstances. But if somebody just loses their character, you're not telling them you can never have it back, but it also feels a little bit more special than just somebody saying, I cast Raise Dead.
What about followers? What do we need to keep in mind if you want to give your PCs a fan club that's following them around everywhere in the world?
I think the trickiest thing about a follower is you don't want them to be as powerful as your PCs because you don't want them to overshadow them, but they also can't be so fragile that they don't actually feel like a reward because when you hit them, they fall down and they're out of the fight immediately. So you have to walk that line between those two things. They are useful, they can stay in the fight to do a thing, but also not a thing that is as neat as what the PCs can do.
In general, you want to be careful with NPCs that are going to be traveling with your party. You don't want them to be cooler than the PC.
Yeah.
I mean, there are exceptions. Like I think of Zank from the D&D movie. That was just hilarious and brilliant. But I know I have flamed out of campaigns when the GM kept bringing in these really cool NPCs who could do all this cool stuff. And I'm feeling like, why am I here? Why am I even bothering to help when this guy could go do all of it? So it's like, you want to be careful with that. With followers, it can be very cool to add them to the game as your players get more famous.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing cool things. They're saving people. I mean, if they're doing it right, they're saving people. And just like, they're going to get people who kind of like want to follow in their footsteps.
Yeah, and I even think certain classes have that built into their story a little more than other ones. Like, if you're a higher level cleric, you might get assigned like a lower level cleric to learn from you and understand how to harness the deeper mysteries of the faith. It is such a wizard story to have an apprentice eventually.
The paladin or the fighter gets a squire.
Yeah, I mean, you really want to kind of foster those kind of stories when you can. You just don't want that thing being a liability instead of an actual benefit to them. But I do think it feels different when it is someone's follower than if it's just an NPC that's tagging along too. Because then it almost feels like if the follower does something cool, it's still attached to the PC.
What about having followers that are following the party instead of just an individual PC?
I think that works too. That's one of those things that will be interesting because it really kind of depends on if the party has a certain patron and then they give them a specific person to hang out with them and what the conditions of that, are in those circumstances. But that is a good way to handle that because you don't want to have a ton of followers. Like by the time you have everybody with a squire and a apprentice and a junior priest and all of that, then it becomes a whole retinue. And then we get back to like first edition where you have a party of 12 people.
Yeah. You as the GM are already having to run all the bad guys, all the monsters, adversaries, whatever. And now you add in an equal number of PCs and followers that the players are running, and just that combat that should take maybe 40 minutes is now going to take 4 hours.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is one place where I will advocate the sidekicks from Tasha's, because they are built to have sort of a feel of a certain class, but not nearly the complexity of them, which is also what Chris modified for some of the people that hang out with our characters in the Heroes of Pavel's Way.
Yeah. Wrapping things up, what is the most important thing to keep in mind when we consider narrative or non-standard rewards for our players and their characters?
I would say the most important thing is, if you're going to hand out something that the game doesn't tell your players is a reward, make sure that they actually value the thing that you give them. If you find out that they really don't care about just knowing that they have a house, then if that's the only reward they got, then it's kind of disappointing for them.
Yeah, I'm going to say follow the narrative, follow the story that is being told in the game, and do what makes sense. We, in the City of Cowl's game, when we rebuilt the Kraken's Maw and it became ours, that wasn't something the GM planned. It was just something that made sense based on what was happening in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And side tangent, it was the GM's wife who told him to be mean and burn down the Kraken's Maw. And she felt he wasn't mean enough because he didn't actually fully kill the bartender. We were able to save his life.
Wow.
Anyway, it's the reward was, hey, this is a thing we have decided we want to focus on. And you as the GM can facilitate turning that into something that is important for the characters.
Now let's join Ange and Jared for some downtime research, where they do the work so we don't have to.
Every episode, we're going to look for something related to D&D that we want to pass along to our listeners. It might be products, websites, videos, or podcasts, but it will always be something that we think will enhance your D&D experience.
Shard Tabletop VTT is celebrating their 5th birthday. They'll be starting kindergarten in the fall. Wait, what? No, seriously, Shard is my absolute favorite VTT for D&D and Tales of the Valiant. And I am very happy to see them doing well with their 5th anniversary, 5th birthday, whatever you want to call it. They have a very large sale going on with various items in their marketplace. So if you are using them, you might want to check out that sale. And if you haven't been using them and are looking for a VTT to run your D&D and Tales of the Valiant games online, I highly recommend checking it out because it is a very good VTT for what it does.
And I already bought the 5th anniversary dice that they had up in the shop, so...
Oh, I need to see those. I was looking at the dice, but I didn't have time to, figure out which ones I wanted to plunk some money down on.
So I'm going to kind of stay on theme and mention Lone Colossus Games' Intangible Treasures 1 and 2. This is actually a product that exists in multiple forms. And oddly enough, you can get this on Shard Tabletop as one of those forms, because they do have 1 and 2 both up for sale through the marketplace there. But you can also get the physical books that have all of these in it. You can get the PDFs. There are even boxes that have the different rewards on specific cards, so that if you're playing face-to-face, you can just hand them out to your players, and it is just like if you handed them a card that explains what a magic item does, except it explains what this intangible treasure does. And basically, it is a lot of what we were talking about in this episode. It'll be like a title that tells them what they're entitled to and what they're responsible for if they have that title. It might be like blessings or boons or rituals or, what a specific training gives them and how they got that training. And, it's just a great thing to kind of get your imagination going if you want to come up with a variety of these same things that we've been talking about. And I am like a super easy mark when it comes to cards, so I kind of want those cards now, even though I don't know that I would use this in the Chris Estrad game, but someday I might use it somewhere. But if you like widgets or you just want some inspiration for non-standard treasures, you can check this out, and I'll have the link in the show notes for you.
We are happily part of the Polygamers Podcast Network, helping you run and play your best games. We think you'll enjoy another Polygamers podcast like
The Heroes of Havel's Way. The Heroes of Havel's Way is an epic fantasy story about two young heroes, Odie and Aramon. These heroes have the potential to deal with a dire threat from an ancient time that is poised to return to the world. A Titan destroyer, Valhall Morris the Mountain Strangler, stirs. The fate of the barony of Castican may be in their hands. We play the game to find out. We invite you to join us on this journey.
We have used up all of our resources, so I think it's time for a long rest. I hope this adventure was rewarding for you, and we hope you go exploring with us when we start our next adventure.